Okay, so welcome to everybody. Open the Doors 2025. We are very excited to introduce our guest speakers. I will introduce them in a little bit today. Please join me also in acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we gather here today. We acknowledge our First Nations people and their deep and continued connection to country and culture. We pay our respects to the elders past, present, and future, to their ancestors and descendants, as well as our own. And we also acknowledge our friends who are living with dementia and commit to advocating with them as we strive to ensure that they live in a humane, meaningful, connected, and respectful manner. Well, who has opened the doors? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's a space for all of us, not only to express how we feel about the changes that are needed for in dementia and aged care, but it's also a place for everyone to show and share their amazing work in our global community. If you are interested, you can also request to post your work on our website, and it can be there for global people everywhere to access. This also is a space for people to no longer have to work in silos. So we are connected with global thought leaders, people living with dementia, care partners, and family that are living beside dementia. Innovators, disruptors, that includes you, and troublemakers like Maury. To create new designs and new meaningful models of care. We love each other as co-founders. It's pretty fun, actually. Okay, so without further ado, actually, I really wanted to share something with everybody because I was facilitating today, and I kind of wanted to just share a little something from my heart with everybody as we get started. But I'm actually feeling disheartened today. I lost a friend, and the world lost a very special person. Loss is a part of life. Loss is an aspect of dementia that we all know or experience to varying degrees. Last year, I quit my job working in a memory care facility, and there are likely many of you on this call today who have quit the system or left jobs along the way, or maybe you're just new to the field. I wonder if you feel similar to the way I felt. It wasn't that I lost a job, but I also lost people, relationships, and connections that fueled me every day. I no longer got to interact with the 39 residents who lived in that locked memory care facility, residents that I considered friends. My heart ached for months thinking about the mundane day-to-day they had to live and the "that's good enough" perspective that many people choose to view their lives through. And I also get to facilitate and participate in our global Open the Door session today. And so perhaps for similar reasons, we're all here to gather, to share, and to unite our voices to change the system and change the narrative and the perspective that many continue to have regarding those impacted by dementia. These are fellow humans who deserve to live as wonderful a life as possible, one free from as many drugs as possible, one with emotional and relational support, one with hopes and dreams for tomorrow. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. I did ask a resident once what she was grateful for, and she said, "For all the things I haven't done yet." Share this session and share ODT with a friend or two today. Share it with anyone, not just people who work with those impacted by dementia, because we all have a responsibility in this matter, and the system won't change without the rest of the world knowing and understanding more about what is happening. We need to raise the volume of our voices, and we are all going to do that together. So thank you. I just like to get that off my heart, and I felt this would be a good place to do so. And I'm so blessed and excited to welcome our presenters today. But before I do so, we need to take a group photo. So who's taking the group photo today? Because I almost forgot. Erin, can you take the group photo?
Just give me a couple of seconds to.
Everybody turn their cameras on. Yeah.
So turn your cameras on, and then as soon as we hear Erin, he'll come and say 1, 2, 3, and then we'll all smile, and he'll take our picture. Thanks, everyone. Your comments mean a lot.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, smile.
I'm holding your permagrin. Did you get it?
Well, I'm sort of holding my hand up in it, but everybody else looks great. So we'll
okay, great. Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, everybody. So yeah, keep your your microphone off so that you keep yourself on mute until the Q&A. At that time, then of course you'll be asked to take yourself off mute, and you can also ask questions in the chat, and we'll facilitate as many of those as we can after we hear from our presenters today. So today we have three special guests two that I've just met today, and one that I'm looking forward to learning more from. World-renowned geriatrician, educator, and author Dr. Alan Power, who is actually returning to Australia and New Zealand in March, this coming March, as a part of the Eden Alternatives 3-day Eden Dementia Education Series. So that'll be fun. Dr. Alan Power, MD, is a globally recognized and equally as respected by all a geriatrician, as I already said, an international speaker and an award-winning author. Jessica Kim Liu, you can give us a wave since you might be a new face to this space, is a recognized trailblazer, I love that, in changing the culture of care and aging services in Canada. And it's nice to be joined by another fellow Canadian, which doesn't happen very often. So welcome, Jessica. And Sally Hopkins, an experienced manager and leader with demonstrated success in the nonprofit sector, and also the executive director at Eden in Oz and New Zealand. They are going to be discussing a lot of the content, perspectives, and approaches that go into two workshops that are being designed: Dementia Beyond Drugs and Dementia Beyond Disease, introducing concept of person-centered care together with a well-being framework for people living with dementia, and using an experiential approach rather than a medical approach. So without further ado, I will let them take it over. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Would you like me to start, Jess and Sally? Shall I start? Okay, fine. I could see the default looks on their face, so I guess I have to go.
I don't know, it's like, what next?
Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm going to start by saying I'm Alan Power, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And I don't always say that, but I'm saying it today in solidarity for several million U.S. government employees who have been told that it's now illegal to say your pronouns. Mm-hmm. And we are in a very precarious situation over here. And it's actually relevant to this, because I think that when you start trying to homogenize a culture and you start trying to tamp down on diversity and try to tell people that are not part of a mainstream are not to be acknowledged, probably the people that experience that the worst in our society will be people with dementia. So when you start othering people, those are going to get it the worst. They're the ones who are going to be locked up and medicated and forgotten about, because this is a society that throws away people that don't necessarily conform. So I just thought I would start with that. Good to see a lot of friends today. I see Linda and Dolph, and I see Gail, and I see Jason, and lots of friends. And looking forward, hopefully, to seeing you again if the stars align with the current political situation. But my flight's booked. I'm ready to come down there and meet everybody. And just very quickly, the thing that I guess that kind of put me on the stage was a book I wrote called Dementia Beyond Drugs. Back now 15 years ago this month is when it came out. And one thing I've learned since I started writing that book nearly 20 years ago is that it really isn't about drugs. So it's great that I'm a doctor and I can talk about antipsychotics, but the truth is it's really not about the drugs at all. The drugs are not the problem. The drugs were never the problem, I've realized. The drugs are actually a symptom. The drugs are a symptom of a system that doesn't know how better to support people's well-being. And so we use the drugs as a Band-Aid because we get stuck and we don't know what else to do. And so that's really what I had to go through in learning what else to do. I had to do a lot of unlearning as a doctor, as well as learning new ideas. And certainly the workshops I present with Jessica and Sally and on my own are about both learning and unlearning. And I'm also learning and unlearning. And so I'm looking forward to having people there to share their experiences as well. There are basically, just very quickly, three pillars to my approach. That's the simple part. Maury or Josephine mentioned an experiential model. And what that means is that the first thing I did to shift my thinking away from a biomedical reductionistic model was to redefine dementia from the standpoint of experience. Every single person, regardless of type of dementia, so-called stage of dementia, living environment, what are they all experiencing? And I just rewrote that as dementia is a shift in the way people experience the world around them. And that's the one thing I have not changed in nearly 20 years. But it has led me to see things differently, to expand my view, and to come up with solutions that I didn't know were there. Another world-changing thing that happened about that time was meeting the late Dr. Richard Taylor, who, of many of the people I've met living with the diagnosis, was probably my greatest mentor, and really my greatest mentor of anybody. And him saying the first time I saw him speak, "I'm not dying of a fatal disease, I'm living with a chronic disability," and understanding how a disability mindset leads us to not other people, to not marginalize them, but to create accommodations. And to me, the well-being domains that I use, which come from the Eden Alternative, are the ultimate accommodations. Those are the ramps you build for people, like you build wheelchair ramps for people who cannot walk. The ramps are the ramps to the different aspects of well-being. And focusing on well-being rather than focusing on mitigating disease is the second pillar of my approach. And the third pillar is the culture change approach. I'm not crazy about the term culture change, but transforming the environment, not only educating, which is a kind of a personal transformation, but we know that all the education in the world won't help you if you don't change the system you're working in. And that means that we have to change the way operations are. And just a perfect example, in our workshops, we talk a lot about communication techniques, and we talk a lot about slowing down. We talk a lot about connecting with people. We talk a lot about both conversation and personal care being empowering so that people contribute equally, and so that we accommodate their speed of thinking and processing. We accommodate their ability to help with care. If we teach that and you go back to a system that says, get 8 people up before breakfast, then you have failed. We have found people who have had a remarkable change in their demeanor simply by being able to wake up naturally instead of being woken up. If you have an inflexible breakfast time, that doesn't happen. You get an antipsychotic, and I've seen it over and over again. People who are being drugged because the system does not let them wake up or have rhythms in the way they want to have biorhythms. So that's why it's great to be hooked up with Eden Alternative and to always talk about the transformational aspect. The other thing that I started early on, probably about 20 years ago, was questioning why do we have some people in a locked, segregated living area and other people not? And probably the bravest thing I did in my first book, in my mind, was not the challenging of antipsychotics against the medical profession, but actually the challenging of why do we separate people. And I predicted the little 2-page part I wrote in the middle of the book would be the most controversial part of the book. And it was the most controversial part, but I've dug in. I talked a lot more about it in my second book, and I'm working on a third book with Professor Jennifer Carson and Pat Sprigg, which will go into that in great detail. And that will also be the theme, particularly of our day 3 when we're down there. The last thing is that I'm just going to, I can't give a talk about even, bonsai gardening without mentioning that what has helped me the most has been to step away from the medical framework of behavioral and psychological symptoms of dementia. That, to me, is the biggest barrier to reducing inappropriate medications, the biggest barrier to finding other solutions. To me, dementia is real. Dementia has certain symptoms which can affect your ability to cope with situations, but I believe it is almost never the root cause. It is a modifier of distress. And the root cause, more often than not, when you don't obviously see somebody has a urine infection or something, the root cause is in those domains of well-being. And I've been able to not only help with people's distress, not just respond in the moment, but work proactively through that framework to actually prevent that distress from happening instead of just going on day after day and us using the same reactive interventions. Just did a QI study with a home in Toronto of this approach, or in Windsor, Ontario of this approach. They had 20 people they used it on over the course of a year, one of whom had a psychiatric illness, was not going to stop his medication. The other 19 all stopped their medications within the course of the year. And since that, 5-6 months later, 2 have been restarted in various scenarios, one during hospitalization, one with family pressure. The other 17 remain stable. And a colleague of mine is using this in the state of Arkansas with 105 residential care homes. These are the skilled long-term care homes. That's about 50% of the homes in Arkansas. And she has them averaging over 105 homes, 4.6% antipsychotics. So even though it's not about the drugs, it's about creating well-being, that can be the answer when you really take this deeply and embed it into the culture. and the practices of your organization. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to turn over to Jessica, who I've worked with for many years and who brings another whole dimension to everything I've done and has enriched my workshops with a different perspective and with great teaching tools. She's a wonderful instructional designer. So Jessica, take it away.
Al, thank you so much. I was just going to add a lot of what Al talks about in his books and in the workshops really aligns with what people living with dementia want. I've had the good fortune over the years to work in collaboration with people living with dementia. And when I ask them, what do you need and desire to live well? Frankly, they tell us a number of things. Number one, it's not about the cure. They tell me I want to know how I can live well each and every day. And I also need to figure out how I can do that and who I can pull in to help me to live well. Number two, people living with dementia have said, I really want family care partners and health professionals to look at me beyond just the diagnosis and what's wrong with me. Instead, focus on who I am and the whole picture of who I am. And also, they remind me that every single person living with dementia is going to experience their journey so differently. So even if Al and I were both diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease as an example, he's going to experience it very differently than I'm going to experience it. And that's something that's really important to people living with dementia. And I have to say that medical model that we've all been deeply educated and rooted in doesn't do that. It really does focus on deficit and decline and doesn't understand and puts people in boxes and doesn't understand that everyone's lived experience is going to be so different. And then what I was just going to also add is that when I, again, ask people living with dementia, tell me specifically what contributes to your well-being, much of what they tell me aligns with the Eden Alternative's 7 domains of well-being. And so that's why I love the work Al's doing. I've met him in 2011 and been a fan. I keep saying I'm a fangirling over his work and learning from him because it just speaks to what people living with dementia want and need to live well. Anything you want to add, Sally?
I'll unmute myself first. It sort of leads me on to, the why we're actually doing what we're doing. And I've been fortunate to experience the 2-day Dementia Beyond Drugs with Al Power back in 2013. So that's like 12 years ago. Can I just say? Just saying. So we've been, as a collective, we've been talking about the importance of shifting culture, and that when you look at the person, that we see the person first, not their disease. But unfortunately, the medical model is the reverse. So the 2 days really takes you a deep dive into shifting our own thinking, because until we can get our own thinking shifted, there's no point in even expecting others to shift their thinking as well. And the domains of wellbeing really give you the framework, I use that word, I love it at the moment, to apply a different approach. And, we've got clients around New Zealand and Australia who are using the domains of wellbeing, so it's very practical, in their care plans as an alternative to their care plans, so that you get to know the person first. And if you think about just your own, how you would align yourselves with identity, which is the first domain, what would that look like for you? What does that mean for you? We actually don't even ask the questions for ourselves, and yet we're expecting people living with dementia to know the answers, and we haven't even asked ourselves. So this is an opportunity to really think about what's important to us first, and then we can be more informed when we're asking people living with dementia or care partners or medicos or social workers, what does identity, as one example, mean to you and for you? And if you were to develop a diagnosis of dementia, what are, one of the exercises, which is, what are 3 things you'd want someone to know about you if you couldn't speak for yourself? It's a pretty powerful question. And we never even stop to think about that, because we are currently mostly, potentially, or reasonably well, whatever that looks like. But we never ask that question for ourselves. So The Dementia Beyond Drugs workshop, which is based on the book that Al's written and the Dementia Beyond Disease, really give us different options for conversations and to challenge the way it's been and the way it continues to be. So we're 12 years in, Al. We've got another 12 years to go, I think.
You do, maybe. I'm going to be the recipient of this
that.
in 12 more years, I think.
But, I think I find it really interesting that we're having this conversation now. And if I think about the Australian context and the National Dementia Plan that's just been released late last year, and, the first two actions to be looking at is wellbeing and ableism and ageism, and can't think of the other one. But anyway, it's up there. So over the 3 days, we're going to challenge and really work through those. Some of those actions as part of the National Dementia Action Plan, which I think is a really cool thing because people in Australia have got a newer aged care act to navigate. We've got strengthened standards to navigate, and now we've got a National Dementia Plan as well. So, there's so much stuff to do. So there's an opportunity for us all to rewrite some of that and how we'd approach it in the future. So unpacking it. And the symposium, I'll just go on to that first. Next is the third day, and that's pretty exciting. So the 2 days you'll go away with some stuff, and then on the third day the workshop will be keynote from Al in the morning, leadership panel, and we're hoping to have someone living with dementia on the leadership panel because leadership is critical in what we do, no matter where you are in an organisation. And then in the afternoon, we're looking at a practical workshop of how do you start to make changes? How do you unlock the doors? Because everyone's risk averse, and we're looking at changing that mindset and working together to start, not just talk about it, but to actually start. So people will leave the workshop with some practical tools to actually start unlocking the doors in wherever they are, whether it's community care, residential care, disability services, hospitals. Goodness, the sky's the limit, really.
If I could just add quickly, Sally, with the workshop and with the approach, the other thing that I think is an advantage of the approach that steers away from most of the traditional education you get about dementia is that, there are many different kinds of dementia. There are many different levels of ability. And I think a lot of education focuses on all those. And I think it may be good to know a bit about each of those. But as Jessica said, everybody's experience is unique. And the well-being approach can be applied to any person living with dementia, regardless of what they have, what stage they have, where they live, and also can be applied to your team members. If someone's struggling, they can be applied to family members if somebody's struggling. All those things, it is a universal approach. And once you get it, you find a myriad ways that you can apply it in daily life.
I totally agree. Dr. Bill Thomas, the co-founder of the Eden Alternative, said, well-being is elusive, highly subjective, and the most valuable possessions of all. It's true. We all, if you ask anybody, who doesn't want to live well, desire to live well? And so what we talk about that's really good for people living with dementia in these workshops is just good for everybody. And if everybody's well-being is supported, it's just everyone is going to thrive, not just survive. Yeah. I want to pick up a thread that you said, Sally, about leadership. I've learned a lot. And part of what I'm be sharing alongside Al is some of those learnings, the good stuff and the failures too, because that's a lot of the rich learnings. But it does take leadership. And I think Eden Alternative says it right in principle number 10. Wise leadership is the key to meaningful and lasting change. For it, there can be no substitute. We need wise and brave leaders who are willing and open to face reality. The reality is that we're not always doing right by people living with dementia. We can do so much more. And so part of this, Al and I coming, is to share our knowledge, exchange ideas. respectfully challenge, inspire, learn, and share, and so that together we can make that change, because change can't happen in a vacuum. It really does require all of us working together and helping each other out. And so, as they say in Korean, fighting, like we got to be all together and fighting for meaningful change. And I think it can happen when you have wise leaders, and that could be anybody, really just wanting to do good work and help make change.
Yeah. Leadership is not a title; it's a quality, and absolutely, we'll be learning from you as well. I see Mary Beth Whiten on the call. Mary Beth is one of our experts in the lived experience, and for coming from Ontario, Canada, and so glad to see you, Mary Beth. I also see Susie on the call, Susie Singer Carter, and so what I'm doing is I'm going to paste a link into the chat box for a podcast she just dropped with her and Don and me. They went up on YouTube for her Love Conquers All's podcast. And it was a lot of fun. And so I've just dropped that link in the chat box as well. Questions, comments, pushback. You guys are full of it.
There is one question here from the chat. It is a bit of a longer one. I think it's from Teresa. It's for you, Dr. Al. So the question is, I live with dementia, and my biggest trigger is feeling unsafe. I had a life of significant trauma, and I would love to hear your thoughts on whether novel PTSD treatments such as psychedelic-assisted therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or stellate ganglion block being offered at diagnosis as a potential moderator of responsive fear-based behavior. I would love to access such treatment so I can transition from this life into internal peace.
Okay, thanks, Teresa, for that question. It's a fascinating question. Let me start with a disclaimer. I'm not an expert on any of those. I do know some people who counsel a lot about polyvagal theory. Some of the prolonged stress response that comes with a response to repeated trauma or a PTSD type response, and use a lot of techniques such as brain spotting and EMDR to help with their counseling. And I know that can be very helpful to break that fight or flight response that people find themselves in. Some of these treatments you talked about, I do know are being tried for different things. PTSD, alcoholism, and drug abuse are other applications of them. And they may block the response as well. I would say, they might be an adjunct. I would start by saying, what can we do to get to the root cause? And there are a couple of things, some in my arena and some that aren't. In my arena, when I talk about people feeling unsafe, we talk about really three of the 7 need and alternative domains of well-being. The biggest ones are security, and security is more than just physical safety. It is emotional and psychological security. And there are many things we do in our care systems without thinking that can actually decrease people's sense of security. Like, for instance, rotating care partners. So a different person comes in to remove your clothes who you don't know, or having sudden sounds going off in the vicinity that you don't understand, or having people walk into your room without warning, or lots of things that make life a little more unpredictable and a little scarier than it should be. Not explaining what's going to happen next, not having you partner in care. And that goes with the other domain, which is autonomy, a sense of choice and control. And security and autonomy go hand in hand. And we find that by proactively building security and autonomy into every interaction, we can actually help people to feel much more safe, to feel less fearful, even before we get into some of the novel therapies. The third one is connectedness. Familiarity, trust are big parts of security. And so once again, consistency of relationships, consistency of care partners, consistency of situations are all really important too. So I think that those things can be helpful. There also is a lot of trauma-informed therapy for which I am not particularly an expert. So I think there are many things you can do either before them or as an adjunct to them. They may help break the cycle, but they don't take away what happened to you. And so I think the other types of therapy can help get a little bit deeper at the same time. So I would use more than one more than one approach, but certainly the well-being approach has a place to play in that. Anything from Jess?
No, I was just looking at the chat and I saw Josephine's question, which she writes, I often hear that supporting folks to live well requires more staff. Has that been the case? And what I would say to this, and Al and Sally, feel free to jump in. I don't know if it's necessarily more staff. It's, to Al's point, it's dedicated team members supporting and serving the same people that's going to actually help. Because when you know someone deeply well, it doesn't require you to have them tell you that they're not feeling well. Like, I'm a mother of two. And, I can tell quickly and right away when one of them is not feeling well because I know them so well. And when you have the same people supporting the same individuals, it doesn't require a lot more staff. It just requires more time and energy to becoming well known to each other. I would also add that. When you have that level of trust, then you can anticipate and support each other well.
Yeah, you understand people. Yeah, you understand people beyond words. You anticipate. I've seen a lot of people who had, from a medical standpoint, hospitalizations prevented because somebody who was consistently assigned to them picked up on a slight difference sooner than maybe I would have, or maybe than the nurse manager might have. So I think that's incredibly important too, to have that kind of relationship, Jess. So yeah, absolutely. The home I quoted in Ontario that stopped the antipsychotics, they did not staff up beyond their usual complement. The 105 homes across Arkansas that are averaging 4.5%. There are urban, rural homes doing culture change, homes that don't know what culture change is, homes with all kinds of staffing ratios. So what they changed was their approach. They didn't change their staffing. So yeah, we'd all like more staff, but the truth of the matter is that we're not going to get more staff because the globe is aging. And, in 1950, there were 12 working adults for every retired adult globally. And in 2050, it'll be 4 to 1. So if we still need teachers and doctors and construction workers and filmmakers and all those different people, then we are not going to have enriched staffing in residential care. We have got to do better with what we have, and we can. We've shown that with the numbers we have, working differently, as Jess says, building relationships, building that deep knowledge, and using a different approach, we actually have efficiencies and better care.
Yeah, I was going to add in the work that Al and I have done together to support organizations to move towards more person-centered, person-directed care. We help introduce consistent assignment, dedicated support to one of the organizations. And they've had really good results when they introduced it. So again, having the same people supporting the same individuals, team members were happier, residents were happier, we had better outcomes, and all those things associated with the domains of well-being, we can better support because of the same people serving and supporting the same individuals.
Sally, I think I saw you open your mouth. Go for it.
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to add, so I absolutely agree with all the consistently assigned staff, but I think there's also education around what being a team member means, because staff still see themselves as acting in silo. So the consistently assigned team approach enables people to actually work better as a team, but they need to understand the fundamentals of what being a team member means. And developing the opportunity for, and this is around leadership, guides and mentors that can actually enable the teams to work better, So we need to put input into the staff for them to understand their job roles can be different. It's not just about the roster. And it's key about relationships. And then we get the pushback with, but what about professional boundaries? So the professional boundaries are absolutely important, but you can still be friendly to a person and understand who they are. And through the domains, you get to know who this person is in front of you.
Maury, I know you've got your hand up, but I believe that Teresa had her hand up earlier. Teresa, if you're still there, if you have a question, we can pass over to you.
Just very quickly, I love what I'm hearing. what I'm looking for is, as an advocate, how can I take this message forward? You know, do you have any, who do I approach? The department? Do I approach the organizations? Do I approach providers? You know, how can I bring this big, enormous thing where we're trying to move from task-based KPIs to person-based KPIs and have that, for example, as part of a star rating mechanism, so you can see if it's person-directed or task-directed type of organization. I'm just looking for a little direction.
Teresa, where do you live?
I'm in Sydney.
Okay, so maybe our Aussie friends have a better idea about the best communication channels for you to get to your local areas.
What I would say, Teresa, is, and I can only speak to my experience, is that we introduced Al's definition of dementia and the well-being approach as much as we could to as many people as we could. So I think back to the organization I used to work at. We introduced it to our team members. We introduced it to our residents. We introduced it to our family care partners. We introduced it to all of our community partners. We even, any external organization that we had a relationship where we were like, you need to hear this message. Can we share this message? And so we talked about and introduced Al's definition, the well-beings. What we also did was we leveraged people living with dementia, like our friend Mary Beth, who's on the call, to advocate alongside of us to say, this is why we need a new understanding of dementia. This is why we need a new approach. And so that's, from my experience, that's what we've done, and it's served us well.
I was just going to suggest, Mary Beth, if you would like to say what you're doing, because Mary Beth is doing a lot of this work very successfully.
Thank you. I think it's a really good question, Teresa, that you're asking, which is really, it's about advocacy and how do we bubble up and get other people, in particular policymakers, to engage with us, to embrace something that is different in thinking and challenging. And it requires a lot of advocacy, simply put. And I know you're a great advocate over there. I would target your policymakers, and much of it has to do with education. If the policymakers is unaware that if you do this, it can actually help, then they're not going to support it. So the question becomes, how do you as an advocate help in the education of policymakers? So a really important question, including, possibly bringing in the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities representative to help couple why this is so important. So from a high level advocacy internationally, that's what I would suggest.
And can I just add, Mary Beth and a number of our colleagues, we volunteered, we raised our hand as many advisory committees as we could get involved in. We went to as many conferences we could attend. And again, shouted from the mountaintops about why we need a new understanding, why we need approach. And so when we did that in collaboration, it really did move the needle. Yeah. Hope that's helpful.
Awesome, thank you. Maury, you've got your hand up next. I'm mindful of Linda and Al, and we've got about 13 minutes left. So Maury, I'll just pass to you. Oh, you're on mute, Maury.
Mute? Yeah, sorry, I was too excited. I don't want to take up too much time, and maybe this could be answered later, but person-centered care is a term that seems to have become a buzzword, and it's thrown around, and it doesn't seem to really align with what Kipwood actually meant. It seems to become a marketing line and promoted as a model of care. So my question is, how do we protect Kipwood's actual intentions of the concept of person-centered care? And can you share with us what Kipwood's gift actually meant in his terms to you, any one of you?
I'll share my personal journey with that terminology, Maury, and I'll just mention I have to get off a bit early in about 5 minutes because I have a conflict, but I'll do this and hopefully I can catch Linda too before I go. I want to share my favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes from our Australian colleague, Daniela Greenwood, who once said, much of what we call person-centered care is actually just bossing people around in a very individualized way. And I love that because it's so often true. Eden has changed that to person-directed care to kind of raise the bar a bit. Some people say relationship-centered care. In my second book, I talk about all those terms. And I think that maybe in my mind, what I come to be bothered by the most is the word care. Care really puts you in that, even though Eden defines care more holistically, the general thought about care is that it's a unidirectional sort of medical nursing oriented thing. And let's talk about living, and let's talk about supporting each other to live well. That's what I would say about that.
Yeah, agreed. When we, again, invited people living with dementia to help us design a new education program and philosophy to go with it, people living with dementia said, I want to focus on living my best life today. You know, to borrow a line from Mary Beth, it's carpe diem. I want to live, seize the day and live life to the fullest. So it's beyond just person-centered care, person-directed care. It's how can we work together to create that destiny that we want to see and believe. So for me, it's always been about having active engagement, co-conspirators, allies together, working together to design that future, whether it's a service, whether it's with research, whether it's with policy. That's what I believe is the new way of moving forward.
Thanks, Jessica. Linda, Maury, does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, but it's a whole nother. I reckon it's a whole podcast or a series.
Yeah, exactly.
How do we? I'm not going to. Don't answer this, but I just wonder how do we protect that term because it's just been abused terribly. Anyway, over and out.
I'll quickly just pass to Linda and then Alwyn, and we should be at close.
Okay, I'll try and be quick. Teresa, my answer really is that we have to seriously attack the issue of dignity of risk in Australia. So many people are terrified of litigation. I haven't found yet any facility in the country which is not locked in one way or another. The unit might be unlocked to the garden, but the total is locked against the community. And even if you look at home-based care, you know that I looked after Vida for a very long time at home. And unfortunately, she was not prepared to wear any she wasn't prepared to engage with AI, which would have allowed me to keep her completely free to do whatever she wanted while mitigating the risk of running across the main drag at peak hour, for example, right? So there were issues for me in keeping her safe as well. But it goes so far that she was her provider and a member of her family attempted to put her under public guardianship orders and attacked me legally in order to force her into locked residential care. So that's where we have to start from. We've got to stop that. We've got to change that mindset. And we've got to really get people to understand what's behind the UNCPRD and the limitations about the freedom of people to live and move as they wish, where they wish. We do have the technology now to keep people safe if they will wear it, which Vida wouldn't. But basically most people would, and we have the possibility of accompanying people if they want to go out and about, etc., etc. We don't have to leave them at great risk of physical damage. But we're nowhere near it in Australia, and we have to challenge that basically. That's all.
I got to jump in real quick and just say that I'm going to have to run, but I appreciate the great questions. If there are other things, you can find me, have Nicole send me questions or jump in on LinkedIn or whatever. But I'm looking forward to March. So thanks, everybody, very much. I'm going to say goodbye and let Jess and Sari carry the ball.
Okay, thank you, Al.
Bye now.
Okay. I might just pass to Alwyn if he's there, and we'll just if Al.
I'll try and be quick too. So it's it was for Dr. Allen, but I'll just go. I just tried to find you on LinkedIn and couldn't find you, but I just love your passion for it, and also Sally and everyone, as always. Just repeat what I said for all of last year. But my question was about assessing and treating people with dementia. That's a special area for me because I'm a physio, and I've seen many physios not see the signs of pain, non-verbal, behaviours, our great little Goebbels speak that we've been talking about already. But for just going on from that theme of non-medication based treatment, what have you, Sully and Jessica, found can be very effective, I suppose, to help people, just have that worldview they can experience and shift things. It's very hard to do that when you're in pain. That's what I always find.
Sally, you and me and Al have had that discussion. There is a place for medication when it's to help someone. Now, what the concern is the misuse of it. And so we've actually talked about how pain is underdiagnosed and
Australian Pain Society, 60 to 80% of pain's underdiagnosed or undiagnosed. It's insane, and then it's the same in the community though. When you said about medication, I mean, we've got the same problems there, and why would we not think it's a problem in residential care? It's a huge problem. So
but it's largely based on this misconception that people living with dementia don't experience pain.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Sally, you were going to add something?
Yeah, no. If we don't get people's pain under control, no matter what state of play they're in, no one's going to play well. I mean, yourselves.
I'm grumpy.
When you're in pain, it's nothing to do with cognition. That's just like, you know what, I hurt and I need that under control. So, there's a right way. And pain management, and that's a whole, education program. It's anything an approach.
Yeah.
But, when you've got the person's pain under control as much as possible, if we're missing someone's meds program, like it's moved from 4-hourly to 8-hourly and they're not getting it when they need it, it doesn't matter what the day is going to be. It's going to be not very nice to start with. So once you've got your pain in control, then you can look at, okay, so now what's happening for this person, and thinking about the connectedness and their identity and, how does their day start? So I've heard stories anecdotally where some people, they need to have their Panadol osteo before they get out of bed and a cup of tea. That's the way you want it to be. But if in a medical model, it's like get up, get going without actually managing those first few, minutes, half hour, 1 hour, just let people. So that the rhythm of daily life is really important to get set.
Sorry, Sally.
You go on. Yep.
I was just going to add in the workshop that we do, Al and I, we often talk about pain too. It could be environmentally related. I think of Mary Beth again, not to put Mary Beth on the spot. She has hyperacusis. And so a lot of noise can be painful to her as well. And so we need to be mindful what are all the factors that could lead to pain, and it's not just something that's happening within the system due to an infection or anything else. There are other causative factors that can create discomfort and pain as well. So we talk a lot about that.
We've had some amazing questions in the chat there, which I don't think I'm going to fully get across, but Nicole, just grab your hand up and then we'll close out at to the wrap up, and thank you. Sorry.
Good, I can stop typing. I was furiously trying to type my comment, but I just wanted to say, as a gerontological nurse of many years, I have seen doctors reach for antipsychotics before pain meds more times than I can even recount. So we need to get nurses and carers better at doing ABI pain scores and advocating daily. This seems like an unmet need. Let's rule out pain first and the others. You've got delirium and UTIs, but it is honestly, I would love to see everybody with dementia with some kind of pain therapy. The first thing we do when they move in with us is put them on regular Panadol, and then we go into maybe a pain patch. You're not going to get addicted, but it takes away, honestly, like 60, 70% of the distress immediately, and then you can work backwards from there, But it's so sad that doctors would rather get risperidone than panosteo out. And it's very common. So we, once again, need to flex to people with dementia and read that room better so we can set them up with a good baseline to see what pops up after that. And Sally, explained that as well. But it's time to shift that thinking towards pain meds, and then whatever's left post that. You've got post-traumatic stress disorder inside of dementia that might need an antipsychotic. There's sometimes you actually need one, but we need to get better identifying when and where people need drug therapy. So I think that's an excellent point. Thank you, Alwyn, for raising that about pain and dementia. That's a whole session in itself.
You know me, cut me off anytime to do one.
Side note, to do a pain session.
I do it for the pharmacy students about seeing the differences of non-verbal signs of pain, and even ABIs and things. It's in the skill of the person doing it. It's what your eyes are, the experience in your brain of what you're looking for totally influences the outcome you'll get. So if you think that person's just, not moving, not in pain, how's your pain, Mrs. So-and-so? That is not how you do it. We're just, what Michael was saying, you've got to get people moving, check things related to their diagnosis, what's their background. Go looking, that's the key. Go curious. Go curious,
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That answered my question, though, Nicole, about that there are people doing this. That's always what I love to hear. Thank you.
Awesome.
So we'll see you in Canberra then, Alwyn.
Thank you. I'll just pass to Monique to do the wrap up and close out, but certainly a session on pain sounds amazing.
Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, I have no camera working for some reason. In the pre-meet, it was working. In this meeting, it's not. Anyway, I'm going to have a bit of a quick wrap up and then have a video to share with, is it Mary Beth, if I remembered your name right? Yeah, Mary Beth, which we'll talk a little bit more about the work of Alan. And the workshops coming up and what people will be able to take from that. But speaking to Alan, Dementia Beyond Drugs, 15 years strong, but agree, it's sad that we're still talking about that. And let's hope that maybe in 15 years we'll be looking back going, wow, we got that all sorted 10 years ago. And just a reminder, as Alan speaks about, dementia is a shift in the way a person sees and experiences the world around them. Something I've shared before, my dad living with Alzheimer's for 9 years, when I take him out, generally the first few words he says, the real world. We need to enable people to be in that real world more often. And again, thinking about that unlearning and that learning, we've got people living in closed environments because they're considered, inverted commas, not normal. Let's unlearn how we can bring people into environments that are open. I attended a webinar the other day, and I don't know the specifics, but we'll get it for the newsletter, of a apartment building in Japan, a small one, where the doors are not locked. When someone moves into this apartment, they're introduced to everyone on the street, and they can come and go as they like. And something Nicole Smith shared with me once too is that at some point when someone's further along in their disease, they might not feel safe enough. They will self-direct themselves to stay home and not go out if they're not feeling safe. I think I've got that right, Nicole. Remind me if I'm wrong. But essentially, that people will be okay, and we just got to surround ourselves around them. Wellbeing, moving from medical to more holistic wellbeing models. And that's not just for people living with dementia. We all need well-being. We all need that to be part of our lives that we live every day. And models like the Eden Alternative give that framework to be able to enable approaches that are more well-being focused. And again, about leadership. Leadership is not just someone sitting at the top. And agree with, I think it was Alan that said it's a quality. And whether someone's working on the floor, someone's in community, we all have leadership qualities and all should have the opportunity to share that voice and to be able to lead in the way that we can lead. And just like you're saying, we need to be doing this together. No more working in silos and vacuums. Open the doors is that community to enable us to come together, to share ideas, to make those connections, to be able to work together. We just got to bring more in to be here with us, whether it be from that policy area. We've got the academics are here, which is wonderful as well. But someone said to me the other day, it's about sharing the care And it's something that we need to ensure that we are including everyone to share that care. And again, we're doing that together and sharing the message. And I love shout it from the mountaintops. We so need to shout it from the mountaintops. And I think we're climbing to the top of that mountain and more people are hearing us in whatever capacity. I know my kids almost roll their eyes now when I go out because I start talking about different ways, approaches and unlocking those doors. But I also hear them talking about it, so I know I'm getting through. And I absolutely loved. It's not about care; it's about focusing on living the best life today. I think that's so true. It's about living. It's what we want to do. So, I remember breaking my ankle really badly in 3 months on a couch. All I wanted to do was get back to living. And I think people living with dementia, it's what they want to do as well. When I take Dad to the club, he used to work in a bar and used to tap kegs and run the bar and the pub and the hotel and whatever. And last time I took him, because this is where I should be, and absolutely it's where he should be, sitting in that bar with his media of rushes as it is now. But we help him go to the bar and place the order, and we need more and more of that to start happening. I think, Linda, you said something, I may have already said it, just in regards to we close the door on that connection to community, and that door needs to be open as much as the front door at the provider or wherever it might be physically. So that's just a few notes from me. Coming up, we have Keys to the Door, which will be a follow-on from this, talking about inclusive communities. Some more details coming, but that will be the 25th of February. Then we have our next Open the Doors, which will be global meeting, will be on Tuesday, Australian Eastern Standard Time, the 4th of March. We'll be talking about the future of dementia care. Our two speakers for that day is going to be Beth Nolan, representing Positive Approach to Care, Teepa Snow, and Jason Burton, who is representing Dementia Training Australia. But more details to come about that as well. So that's from me.
Thank you so much for having us tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful
Enjoy your day.